All right, welcome everybody to the Lakers Legacy Podcast, where if a Christian falls in the woods and Rob Pelinka's not there to read a proverb from the Bible, did it even really happen? I'm not sure, but Rob quickly decided that it can never hurt to have more than one Christian man on your roster. So I guess he made the right Coloco. Call loco, I mean.
Hey,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I already used an iteration of this intro and that pun before, but I didn't have much time to prep for today's show, so you guys are going to have to live with it. Anyways, I'm your host, Jonathan Hernandez, and I am joined by my co host, Tommy Alexander. And Tommy, I have no fun, interesting icebreaker question for you today, so let's just jump right into today's topic: injuries and Rui Hachimura. So,
can I just say
Christian
before we
Wood,
start
yeah,
this,
go ahead.
right
Yeah.
before we, so I am driving, if it's not clear to anyone listening. And right before we started this, you said, okay, let's talk about Rui's injuries. Or you said, let's talk about Rui and injuries. And something about the way you said it, I'm like, oh shit, I missed that Rui's out for the season now. Because I'm
No,
driving.
he's not.
Okay. Yeah, but go ahead. I at some point in the beginning of your intro here, I realized what you meant, but go ahead.
Yeah, so no breaking news while you were driving, thank God. Rui Hachimura is still, knock on wood,
Yeah.
healthy. Although, I don't know, by the time I release this episode, maybe he's not, and maybe we were the reason why
Oh
he's now
God.
injured. But anyways, Christian Wood, Jared Vanderbilt, we haven't gotten a chance to talk about their sort of setbacks health-wise. Jared Vanderbilt, his health status is still a bit murky, and yeah, we can get frustrated and blame the Lakers' medical messaging of that whole thing this summer. And then Christian Wood seemed good, then he didn't seem good, and then he went under the knife and won't be evaluated till like the first week of the season. I don't think that's anyone's fault. It's just Christian Wood's knee is sort of jacked up. But yeah, what are your thoughts on those two injuries and how they impact the Lakers? I guess you can sort of like reverse engineer this to when those two injuries initially happened. Like for you, did that, I mean, obviously it changed a lot, but yeah, just give me your thoughts on the Vando and Christian Wood injury, and were you? I know you were planning, you were envisioning big things for Jared Vanderbilt, obviously, but I don't know, where did you have Wood in your equation of how the Lakers were going to fit him into the lineup as well?
So it's a good question, and I think it highlights the fact that Vando was, in my mind, and is still in my mind, much more critical to the team's success this season. That doesn't mean we don't need Wood, by the way. We obviously do. We need all the help we can get. I mean, with the roster that we have, I think Wood, he was going to be competing with Hayes and whoever for backup big man minutes anyway. It wasn't 100% clear he was going to win that battle. And, even if he won that battle, you could make an argument that, like, whatever, give, like, Jackson Hayes, like, the first few weeks of the season and, see what he could do. And then worst case, we can always fall back on Wood, something like that. So the point is, like, we had some option. It's like going from Wood to Hayes or vice versa. It's you can say one is better, one is worse. There's not a huge delta between those two guys, no matter which side of the sort of table you're on. Vando is like the one that's a little bit more depressing to me. And every time I think about it, every time it comes up, it's depressing. I'm probably going to be depressed next week during Rob and JJ's press conference when they are certainly going to be asked about it. Certainly again on media day, there's going to be more questions about his health. I'm probably going to be depressed again because we were not a good defensive team last year. We were fairly mediocre. We are obviously significant. I mean, we're actually affirmatively bad when AD is not on the court. And the one sort of, and a lot of this is anchored by like our two guards are like among the worst defenders in the NBA. I mean, maybe that's like being a little bit too harsh, but they're certainly, both of them are below average. And actually, ironically, D'Lo is probably better than Austin, despite what, not.
Well, he gets the lesser assignment.
He does get the lesser assignment, and maybe on an island, I would want Austin over D'Lo. But the point is, they're both hovering in the same realm of effectiveness overall as defensive players. And so the thing about Vando was like he was always that like fallback. It's like, okay, if we have lineups where we're playing D'Lo and Austin, we're getting so much firepower from our backcourt, which we saw that we can get, right? This is not theoretical. Like they did it for an entire season last year, and it was like amazing to watch. And that was with, by the way, Austin being kind of up and down in his sort of new roles. I I think the one mental like relief we had there was like you could throw Vando in with those lineups and he could defend on the perimeter. Um, again, same thing that like looking at our wing depth, like, okay, we're losing Torian Prince. We pick up Connect, who, is obviously you don't want him defending wings. Like in a pinch, you could throw him out there on the wing.
Cam
Yeah,
Reddish.
exactly. So it's like, Cam Reddish and Vando, like obviously you want Vando, right? You want Vando to be filling those minutes and the kind of impact he can have. And we saw it in limited minutes last year. And it was a lot of waiting and, suffering, thinking about like all the lost potential of not having Vando last year. And all summer it was like, okay, well, whatever. I guess, that then now last season you wipe your hands, go into this season, and now we'll have that. That's like a certainty. He missed the whole year. What could go wrong? And then it's like, okay, he's still injured. And it's like, okay, cool. So I think it's like two things. It's like you worry about now, but this is the first year of his 4-year extension. I mean, like if
Yeah.
this foot injury continues to linger, this is not like oh, well, that's unfortunate for our rotation. This is like you can't even call it an asset. It's like a liability that will cost one or more, depending on when we want to dump him, right? One or more first round picks to dump $48 million guaranteed money. I mean, it's just like a lot, right? So I think, or 45, whatever it is. That's the thing that's really, really, really rough. I mean, all of this is bad, but that's the highlight that's really, really rough about Vando specifically.
Well, you brought it the direction I was going to take it anyways in terms of your outlook on Vando's long-term future with the team, because we're talking about, if this foot injury is going to linger, but Jared Vanderbilt has had a history of foot injuries dating from high school and college. It's just the last 2 or 3 years in the NBA, he's been cleared of that. But if it's cropping back up again, all of a sudden this isn't just coincidental. All of a sudden we point back to his health issues back in high school and college that made him fall in the draft. And you have to question and wonder, is there a reason why the Lakers were not talking so much about Jared Vanderbilt when JJ Redick got hired? And so, yeah, I guess my question to you, like, can Jared Vanderbilt be relied upon long term, or do the Lakers need to have, I'm sure they're having these conversations, but do they need to have these types of conversations about, one, not only offloading Vando, but if you can't get off of Vando, should we just start to see him as, I mean, obviously monitor his progress, and if he's fine, but if he's not, maybe we just view Vando as this sort of ancillary cherry on top of the sundae, but we need to find something more consistent and substantial with regards to point of attack defense. And in the meantime, if we can't get that, I mean, let's say Vando is available to start the season off, Tommy. Are you still starting him over Rui? Or at this point, is it just better to be like, let's go with the durable, safe thing, even if Vando is available, and not run Vando into the ground? This was my argument point the last I think 2 episodes ago when we were talking about the Rui and Vando debate. I was mentioning it's going to boil down to Vando's health, because if Vando is available but only operating at 70% Vando all the time, I think I would just start Rui in general because he's the more durable player, because I don't want to put Vando in there and then have him toggle back and forth. He'll play a couple games, re-aggravate an injury, and then we'll have to pull him. I'd rather just have Rui consistently there because I know he'll be available. And if Vando can round himself back into form, that's great, but he should maybe just be the bench guy. But yeah, that's kind of a lot of questions. But yeah, what's your long-term outlook on Vando?
So just to respond to that specific point, and I'm simplifying this a little bit. I know that this is not the exact same situation, but I don't think, like, if Vando is healthy enough to participate in camp, the thing is it's all ambiguous, which just makes me nervous because ambiguous is usually not good. But if let's say Vando, like the week before camp, the end of the last week of the preseason, right before, he gets one game in, but he's gotten like practices in, the coaching staff has seen him, and they determine that he is the better player. who is going to win us more games now, in the starting lineup, I go with him all day and night.
Sure.
And the reason I say that is because it's sort of the same thing as like the D'Angelo Russell argument, that people were trying to make before, like,
That's true.
well, we're going to trade him anyway, so we might as well just get used to him not being here. Let's just bring him off the bench. Like, I think like it's an 82 games. We do put a lot of emphasis on, like, for example, the Celtics and their continuity last year, the Nuggets and their continuity the year before, having a 5-man rotation. Their 5-man starting lineup played like, light years more, minutes than the Lakers starting 5, or any 5-man lineup the Lakers had that year, and most other 5-man lineups that existed in the NBA that year. Those are all important things. At the end of the day, Vando or Rui or whoever that, like, we're talking about like our 5th best player in the starting lineup, because Austin, D'Lo, AD, and LeBron are our top 4 players in some order, right? And so I'm not that worried from a continuity perspective if we have to make that kind of swap. It's like, these guys are professional. Things we have, these guys, meaning like especially LeBron and AD, but even like expanding to D'Lo and Austin and some of the other role players, have already gone through like seasons where they've had significant shakeups mid-season, whether due to injury or trade, or just like rotation decisions. And so like these guys are professionals and they'll deal with it. And at the end of the day, it's still an 82 game season. And so as long as Vando's healthy, you have to, if he is better, you have to play him, in my opinion, for that reason.
Mm-hmm. That's fair, but not if he's like 70% and he's still working himself into
shape.
Of
course.
But
in that case, he shouldn't be playing at all, right? And I think that's the problem that happened last year. Is like, we tried to get him into shape. It felt like at times, like in real NBA games, when he, in hindsight, clearly was not ready, because he had significant stretches. I shouldn't say significant because he didn't play that many games, but of the 25 games he played or whatever, like half of those, he was not the Vando that we know. And then he got into shape, and then it's like he had like a 10, 12 game stretch where he was the Vando that we know, or even better than what he did the prior season.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, to your point, if he's not fully there, there's no reason to like run him into the ground when we have other options. But that's sort of how I view the Vando situation. Any guy might get hurt. He's seems like more prone to getting hurt than others, but I don't think that that's a reason to not play him if we think he's better than the other options.
Yeah, for sure. And you intimated it at it earlier, but to my first question, what's your kind of concern level on his long-term future with the team? Because as you mentioned, this is the first year of a 4-year extension. Do you think the Lakers are having these sorts of conversations with regards to, can we actually count on this guy? And even once he's healthy, the type of player Vando is a guy who really hits, he hits the Nas button all the time. Like, the most effective Vando is running himself into the ground. And so do the Lakers need to start making contingency plans, even if it's with Vando on the roster still?
Yes. I think the issue with Vando is if he's actually hurt, he has no value. He like, to excuse me. Excuse me. To put it another way, Vando was priced, like the valuation on Vando's contract was very clearly forward looking. This was like a contract that Vando's relatively young, still developing player. The contract was priced for him to grow into. That was not a contract that he necessarily earned, right, at that point in his career. If he's not able to grow into that contract, one second, I need some water.
Tommy's drinking some water, wetting his palate right now. I will probably cut this out of the episode, or maybe I'll forget to, and you'll have to hear Tommy coughing. So I am just filibustering right now.
Excuse me, sorry.
There you go. You're good.
So he was priced to grow into that contract. He wasn't necessarily worth that, right? If he doesn't do anything, he needs minutes, I guess what I'm getting at, to like prove that he's even worth that level of contract. Like, I think the thing that becomes tough as a fan, valuing your own players' contracts, is everything about this guy. we know the full circumstances of Vando's whole career because we're super fans. You know what I mean? And so the second we get a guy, it's like we're looking up where he went to high school and like his college highlights and his college scouting reports. So it's going to be like tough for him to get there if he's not playing. And so like I guess like look at Robert Williams. He's shown actually in NBA games more than Vando, and he has no value. Because
I think comparable. I think they're comparable in terms of what they've showed. But yeah, your point is well taken, because I was going to go that same direction of, I think we might be entering a Robert Williams situation, except the Celtics were able to get off of that contract right before he injured himself again. But yeah.
Right. So, and so like if we end up in that situation, I'm sure that that's something they're going to explore. But who knows, right? It's too hard to project.
Yeah, so now that takes us to the main meat of our episode, and it's turning our sights to once again Rui Hachimura. And so why don't we take it to break here, and when we return, let's just talk all about Rui and his importance to the team given Jared Vanderbilt's, up in the air status with his health. So we will catch you guys after the turn. All right, so we are back. Before I ask you this question on Rui, Tommy, I didn't even ask you. Would you agree that Rui Hachimura becomes a key player for the Lakers and their success moving forward, given Jared Vanderbilt's injury, or would you place that on some other player?
No, Rui is a huge key if we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't forcing this topic on you. So now that we've got that out of the way, so yeah, with Vando in question, not only for this upcoming year but moving forward, how key is Rui Hachimura? And I think I want to kind of unpack this a little bit, because I'm starting to realize, I mean, Rui Hachimura is almost starting to delve into the D'Angelo Russell discourse with regards to how split fans are on his game, which I don't really like. But I'll just say that I had started to venture down that overreactionary road with regards to Rui after his terrible 5-game showing against the Denver Nuggets in this past first round series. But I think maybe we're starting to see this offseason why the Lakers and JJ Redick have been so heavily highlighting Rui Hachimura this summer. And again, in spite of some fans' overreactions to his terrible 5-game first round series against the Denver Nuggets, myself included, is the Lakers front office actually smart, Tommy, in not bailing on a talented, strong player who, while flawed, has showed incremental improvements every year of his career, especially with the Lakers? And again, I fell into the recency bias trap of letting Rui's Denver series totally stain my overall outlook on him, to the point where, and we have this on record, to the point where I was fine trading Bruce Brown in the number 17 pick before we knew who that was going to be. I was fine trading Bruce Brown and the number 17 pick for Rui Hachimura, because I was like, Rui Hachimura is just never going to improve. And a few months removed from that, I realized that was very short-sighted. And at this point, I wouldn't even trade Rui Hachimura for Bruce Brown straight up. Once I sort of remembered again that like Rui Hachimura is like sort of a sponge, I think in the midst of battle, in the midst of a season, it takes him some time to get caught up. But every offseason, we've seen him improve in like major things that people thought were going to be fluky, whether it's his 3-point volume, his 3-point efficiency, his ability to play off ball next to guys like LeBron James and Anthony Davis. People probably never thought he could be a 16-point scorer unless he had the ball in his hands, And so obviously the biggest thing, we already know this, the biggest thing Rui Hachimura needs to improve on is his defensive motor, particularly his off-ball defensive awareness and IQ, and his rebounding motor. But I think even last season we had already begun to see strides in those respects. Like, just to recap Rui's season last year, again, 22-10 to close with him as the starter, 16 points, 5 rebounds on 57% from the field, 44% from three, hitting 1.7 threes a game. In games in which Rui played at least 30 minutes, which was 24 games, Rui averaged 17.8 points, 5.7 rebounds, which actually isn't bad, 56% from the field and 42% from three, hitting 1.8 threes a game. That's crazy. Almost 18 points and 6 rebounds in the games that he played 30 minutes in. And then, even with regards to rebounding, in his last 11 games of the season, he averaged 7.1 rebounds. And in the month of April, he averaged 6.4 rebounds. And during that same 11 game stretch, he had a double double in 3 out of 4 games. Now, one of those games was a 0 rebound game, which kind of tells the tale of Rui Hachimura's sort of bipolar nature with regards to cleaning on the glass. But even from a rebounding perspective, you saw Rui make strides. Obviously, he hit that huge wall against Michael Porter Jr. and trying to fight against screens and being mentally engaged with trying to track a movement shooter like Michael Porter Jr. So he can definitely clean up his defensive awareness. But having said that, knowing what we know out of Rui Hachimura, knowing that he has been a sponge during his time here, I have no doubts that he knows for himself what his major stains and question marks are entering this upcoming season. And so I think he's heard the noise, and I think he's actively going to work on those parts of his game this offseason that so many people have been pointing to with regards to the defensive motor and the rebounding motor. So with that said, what are your thoughts on Rui Hachimura and him being such an integral part of the Lakers, in spite of the fact that many fans were pretty much, for obvious reasons as well, putting him into every trade package because of the salary that he makes? And maybe that's a fair, maybe it has nothing to do with who the player is, but I know there's a large faction of this fan base that was ready to give up on Rui Hachimura. And I think while the Lakers were pursuing different trades, I think it was smart of them to actually see Rui Hachimura as a long-term sort of prospect who I think kind of fits the bill of the development continuity culture that they're trying to build, where they're not just going to willy-nilly turn the tables on a player that they've sort of invested in.
Yeah, in some ways, the Rui conversation is like even more offensive than the D'Angelo conversation, because like there are just like D'Angelo is an extremely, extremely efficient, high, scoring, like great scoring, like very, very adept offensive player. There are point guards who can do that, right? It just like once you start getting up to like 6'8" guys who can hit 40+% from three, as Rui kind of showed he could do over the course of the season, who can slash, who as your fifth option in a starting lineup that included, two guards who need the ball, who prefer to have the ball in their hands, LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The fact that Rui is able to go out there and efficiently put up like his 14, 15 points a game, that is like not something that you could just sort of gloss over as like, yeah, anybody could do that. Like they're not, when you're looking at 6'8" guys, you're really looking at a small universe of guys that could do that. I think the key with Rui, which everybody knows, is, well, it's really, I guess, two keys. One is he going to improve defensively? And I think like defensively, it's really a lot of it is his off-ball defensive awareness. You mentioned the like getting lost on Michael Porter Jr. I mean, there were like, I think that I can't remember if it was game 1 or game 2 in Denver, where Michael Porter Jr. hit a big three to either win the game or, put them ahead at the end. And then there's like the replay where like, you look at the back angle of like the Lakers defense and Taurean Prince is like trying to push Rui because he knows what play is coming, and Rui's just like standing there with his hands on his ass and like no man's land, like not doing anything. Like those types of things can be cleaned. Hopefully can be cleaned up. Some guys never clean it up. I just like, to your point about Rui being a sponge, it does seem like he's been able to adapt and pick these sorts of things up. I think the second big key though is buying into a role, and maybe beyond like buying into a role, having a clearly defined role from the coaching staff. I think like when you look back at last season, the turning point for our team, as it has been, sadly, it was like, February. From February on, we looked pretty good. And people point to like putting Rui in the starting lineup, and that made a big difference. And that's part of it, right? But I think it's like we also started playing differently, right? It's like we set records, like franchise records for offensive output. And that wasn't by accident, right? It was like And it wasn't just because we were running some fancy like Warriors motion offense that like team NBA teams weren't ready to adapt to. We very clearly made a concerted effort or like a concerted team decision that we're going to win games with offense. And so all of these guys were just like, I mean, we were like make, miss, take the ball in the basket and run the other way and dunk it. Right? Like that was our model for trying to win games, and it worked.
And Rui was cutting on the baseline.
And
He was passing better as the short roll man. Like,
and
yeah.
Rui was a significant part of that. And so it's like you just wonder, like, what was the messaging from the coaching staff to Rui last year? Was it do that kind of stuff? Or was it be the defensive stopper and like, don't worry about the offense? Somehow I suspect it wasn't that, right? And so like what is this coaching staff's view of Rui and how to utilize him? And how are they going to message that to him? Like Rui has he's in year 2 of a $51 million guaranteed contract. Like in many ways, based on where things stood for him in Washington, he like quote unquote made it. You know what I mean? Like he got that contract. That was a good contract considering like he was kind of out of the league dealing with mental health stuff, and like a lot of first round picks, even lotto picks, don't get that like second contract. And so he got a sizable one, right? And so like he shouldn't feel like he has anything to prove. Like it's good to work on the offensive game and develop yourself. And when we got him, he was like a mid-range, like back to the basket guy, and now it's like he does all these different things offensively. He's so adept. But you don't need to show those things to like prove who you are as a player anymore. So are you going to be able to show other things? And I think like if the coaching staff is able to get him to buy in defensively, it's going to unlock so much other stuff in his game because, part of the reason Rui was only playing, for significant stretches of the year was playing sub 30 minutes a game was because of his defensive deficiencies. And so like, until we made a concerted effort to just win every game on offense, he didn't get a chance to show us the whole package. And the more he's able to stay on the floor defensively, the more he's going to be able to show us the whole package. And I think, along with the defense, like telling this guy, he really has to pick a lane, right? Like, are you going to play big? Or are you going to be a wing stopper? I don't think he's going to be a wing stopper, so he has to be able to play big and get rebounds.
That's fair.
He was able to do it in stretches, but not the whole season, and so he's going to have to clean that up as well.
Well, I'll say to Rui's credit, we are kind of fitting a square peg in a round hole with Rui here, just because of LeBron's age and because, Jared Vanderbilt's a little bit banged up. And so Rui is kind of, whether he likes to or not, or whether he wants to be it or not, is kind of being forced into that amorphous or hybrid small forward, power forward role. And, maybe LeBron and him take turns, picking up the wing defender. And for certain matchups, Rui even showed some improvement there. But overall, he just needs to be more consistent. And with regards to sort of the movement shooters like Michael Porter Jr., can Rui stick to those types of guys and slither across screens? I don't think he'll ever be even as good as Cam Reddish is at doing that. But to your point, if he can't be amazing at that, then he needs to grab rebounds. He needs to grab the board. He needs to clean the glass, because he can't be both a bad screen navigator with slow foot speed on the perimeter and then not clean up on the glass for Anthony Davis. So right. I agree with you 100% on that portion of Rui's game that he needs to improve. So I guess for Rui, is there a silver lining to, I want to word this very carefully, but is there a silver lining to Jared Vanderbilt's injury in the sense that it kind of makes things simpler for JJ Redick at the start if in fact Rui is the more durable, healthier player and is clearly outplaying Vando? Because Rui, in a sense, kind of fits exactly what JJ Redick wants to do 5-out wise. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, we are just kind of naturally pulling in the continuity from last season. I don't think they're going to win at a 22-10 pace, but at the very least, like, while JJ Redick is getting things sorted out on the margins, he's like, oh yeah, D'Lo, AR, Rui, LeBron, AD, you guys know each other, so just play off of each other, just improvise naturally, and then we'll slowly implement some more, off-ball screening sets here and there. But for the most part, I can trust you guys to just run the offense based off of what you know from the second half of the season. So, is there a slight silver lining to the Vando injury with regards to making it simpler for Redick and giving him a player in Rui Hachimura where offensively he kind of, I don't want to say fits like a glove, but fits like a glove with respect to anyone else on the roster. You may have made an argument for, I don't know, maybe Christian Wood if he was healthy, but Christian Wood's not healthy. So, with regards to who's available offensively, and maybe even on both ends of the court, like Rui Hachimura fits his 5-out offense while also leaving some room for defensive improvement because he wasn't like flat out terrible defensively last year, just against certain matchups like the Denver Nuggets matchup, like the bottom fell out with Rui defensively. But yeah, just answer the question. Yeah, to what like yeah, do you see a silver lining there with regards to Redick can just kind of and maybe Rui was the player that Redick wanted to start in the first place. We don't know.
So I actually really like this silver lining point, and I'll even take it like a different way. When you're pitted against someone in a direct competition, I'm like, forget basketball, right? Put this in any other context, like people trying to build themselves up a reputation, their own career, doing whatever they're doing. You have people you're being compared to. When you're being compared to someone else, isn't it like almost instinctive, no matter what you try to do, like to play to your strengths? Like to show I'm better because look at all these things. Like these are the things I can do. I'm playing to, and you play to your strengths because that's how you think subconsciously that's how you're going to show the most of your value. I think now that you make the silver lining point, it's like, if we go into camp with Rui and Vando competing for the starting spot, I think you're going to get two guys, like, especially in Rui's case, you're going to get a guy who's going to be like, okay, I know how I'm better than Vando. I'm going to go all in on this. JJ Redick wants me to shoot more threes. I'm shooting 6 threes a game. I'm focusing, and it's almost like the focus becomes too much on offense because he's like, insecure about where he stands. And so he falls back on what he's good at. I think like the fact that we're potentially entering the season and he doesn't have to deal with that competition may help him in a way because he's like, I know I'm going to be starting anyway. So if I'm going to be starting anyway, let me work on things that like the coaching staff has been telling me I need to improve on. Because if you're in a competition with somebody going one-on-one, your instinct is not going to be, let me do all the things I've sucked at for the last 5 years and hopefully I'm
That's
better
true.
now. So it's, I think, just taking that silver lining argument a slightly different way, I think it actually could help him, at least from maybe a psychology standpoint, in showing like the things that we're hoping he's improved on.
Well, for sure, in terms of a rhythm and rep standpoint, right? Where if they're asking him to be more attentive defensively, he doesn't need to sort of, I don't know, worry that he needs to perform to the utmost extent on both the offensive and defensive standpoint. Because if his offense drops a little, but he's starting to improve defensively, that may give him a little bit more leash to sort of, I think to your point, I don't know if this is your point, to kind of continue to grow defensively, versus like if I start to slip offensively, is the coach noticing my incremental gains defensively, or will he just like bench me if he's like, oh, Rui's actually not the offensive powerhouse that he was last season, but because Vando's not there, maybe he's able to explore his space a little bit more. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's also the opposite side of the coin where it's like if Vando is healthy and Rui Hachimura knows that his only way of starting over Vando is to show improvements defensively, that he'll probably want to continue to ramp up that part of his game. But I also think there is that flip side perspective that you presented. So, all that to say, Rui Hachimura is going to be a very, very key player for the Lakers this upcoming season because of Jared Vanderbilt's sort of murky health status. So whether Jared Vanderbilt's like healthy to start camp or not, I think if the Lakers want to do anything substantial this season, and especially the first part of the season to make sure they're treading water or trying to make things competitive by being at least a top 4, top 6 team who's out of the play-in, they are going to need Rui Hachimura to once again make another leap, but this time from the defensive and rebounding standpoint more so than he did last season. Because I think with Rui offensively, he can kind of just do that in his sleep now. Now that he's got that 3-point shot working, he's a good catch and shoot, spot up shooter. He can sort of hopefully him focusing on rebounding and moving his feet more, et cetera, being attentive doesn't zap too much away from him offensively. But look, Tommy, I mean, 56% from the field, 42% from three, 57% from the field, 44% from three. We can afford for Rui to, lose a little bit of offensive juice, even if those numbers bump down to he's a 48% field goal guy who shoots 38% from three if his defense and rebounding are much improved, right?
Right.
All right. So with that said, that'll do it for this episode. And yeah, hopefully by the time this episode comes out, everybody's still healthy, including Rui Hachimura. So sorry to scare you at the top of this episode, Tommy. But yeah, with that said, that'll do it. We will catch you guys next time. Follow us on Twitter at Lakers Legacy Pod. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Lakers Legacy Pod. And yeah, give us a 5-star Apple Podcast rating and review, or give us a 5-star on the Spotify app. And we will catch you guys next time. Tommy, I will see you later.
Peace.
Laters.